The Friendship of Two Kingdoms. Part 1, The Council of Bloodlines. I still remember the night the message came to my throne. The herald had arrived at the gates of my castle, battered and bruised from his journey. He had carried the royal seal from the kingdom of Velen, my ancestral enemy. The letter was brief, almost mocking. Come to the valley of Arghorn. If you are brave enough to end the feud that has lasted centuries, meet me there. Arrogance in the message infuriated me, yet I couldn't deny the spark of curiosity it ignited. For decades, our kingdoms had fought over land, resources, and old grudges, both sides soaked in the blood of their soldiers. But as I read the letter again, a part of me wondered if this could finally be the end. I called for an emergency council. My trusted advisors, all hardened men and women, stood around the map of the kingdom, their eyes darkened with suspicion. This could be a trap, Your Majesty, said my general, Lord Phaelon, his voice thick with distrust. The Valinians would never send such an open invitation unless they meant to deceive us. I met his gaze, my thoughts swirling. Perhaps. Or perhaps they are equally tired of fighting. Perhaps they are willing to negotiate. I could see the skepticism in the eyes of my counsel, but there was something in my heart that whispered that this might be the turning point. So, I made the decision. I would go, alone. The journey to Arghorn was long, and as I crossed into the no-man's land, a place where neither kingdom dared to set foot, my mind wrestled with doubt. What if this was an elaborate trap? What if I was walking into the lion's den? The moment I stepped into the valley, I saw her. Princess Leora of Velen. She was standing by the large, ancient oak tree in the center of the valley, her long black cloak flowing like the night itself. Her eyes met mine, dark and unreadable. You came, she said, her voice a mixture of amusement and something more. I expected you would. I suppose that's why you're king. I walked toward her, each step feeling like it carried the weight of 1,000 battles. Why have you summoned me here, princess? To mock the death of our people. She shook her head slowly. No, to offer you peace, but not the kind you're thinking. No treaties, no signing of papers. I propose something more personal. The air between us thickened with the tension of unspoken words. What was she suggesting? Personal? I asked, barely able to mask my growing unease. Yes, she said, stepping closer, her eyes narrowing. A test. We are both rulers, burdened with the expectations of our people. But before they can accept peace, we must show them that we are willing to sacrifice something real. Something they will understand. Something that proves we mean it. I was about to ask what she meant when she motioned toward a hidden cliffside. My heart raced when I saw what she revealed, a series of stone rings, each one marked with blood from past ceremonies. You and I will face a trial, she continued, not of our armies, but of our own spirits. We must prove that we are more than the kings and queens of old, more than the warlords our people expect us to be. She paused, then added, the first trial will be to let go of everything we have known. Our pride, our anger, our hatred. Only then can we form an alliance. Only then can we convince our people. I was struck silent. Was this a test of strength, or one of vulnerability? Could we, ever let go of the things that had shaped us into what we were? Agreed, I said at last, though the word felt foreign in my mouth. Peace seemed so distant from my world, but something in Leora's eyes told me this was the only way. Part 2. The Trial of Blood. The trial began as the sun dipped below the horizon, the air growing heavy with the weight of history. We stood in a stone circle, each marked by a symbol of our kingdom, mine the golden lion, hers the silver falcon. You must step into the ring and face the trial of blood, Leora explained, her voice steady but her hand trembling just slightly. There will be no weapons, no armies, only you and I, stripped of our crowns, our titles, and our pride. I nodded, my heart pounding. What was the trial? What would it ask of us? We were not soldiers in this moment, but two people standing on the precipice of history. Would we falter? Leora stepped forward first, placing her hand into a bowl of liquid that shimmered like liquid silver. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. I followed suit, my hand entering the bowl with a sense of foreboding. It wasn't blood, not exactly, but something more. A strange warmth spread through my fingers, and I could feel memories, decisions, battles, wars, flooding my mind. My kingdom's history, my personal story. It was all here, condensed into this moment. As the light from the bowl grew brighter, I felt the weight of my ancestors pressing down on me. Their voices, their thoughts, their deeds, it all crashed through me. But then, something strange happened. The memories began to unravel. I saw visions of those I had fought, not as enemies, but as people. Their families, their stories, their dreams. I saw their children, their homes, their hopes. For the first time, I felt the burden of the many lives I had taken, not as a king, but as a person. Leora's eyes met mine as we both stood there, submerged in the trial. "Let go," she whispered. "Let go of the anger, the hate." It was in that moment I realized what the trial truly asked. Not of strength, but of surrender. Surrender to humanity, to the realization that we were all human, bound by the same fears, hopes, and desires. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in my life, I let go of my hatred. Part 3. The Road to Unity. The trial was over, but the hardest part had just begun. Leora and I stood side by side, the weight of the trial still fresh on our minds. There was no ceremony, no applause. There was only silence. "Do you think your people will accept this?" I asked quietly, my eyes fixed on the horizon. Leora smiled, a soft, melancholic smile. "I don't know, but we must show them the way. We must lead by example." And so, we returned to our kingdoms, forever changed. The trials had not been just for us, but for our people. They needed to see that we were willing to risk everything for peace. The road ahead was uncertain, but as I stood before my people, the words I spoke had weight. The old kingdom of enemies had been laid to rest. What lay ahead was a new world, one born not of war, but of understanding, sacrifice, and the willingness to let go. And together, Leora and I would lead our kingdoms into that world, knowing that peace was not won in a moment, but in 1,000 small acts of courage. Part 4. The Gift of Peace. The alliance of our two kingdoms was not forged in battle, nor in the courts of kings. It was forged in the hearts of those who dared to dream of a better future. The people of Velen and my kingdom stood together, not as enemies, but as partners in a new age. It was then that I realized, peace, true peace, does not come from treaties or alliances. It comes from understanding. It comes from seeing the world not through the eyes of a ruler, but through the eyes of a person. And so, I stood there, beside Leora, knowing that our kingdoms were no longer divided by bloodlines or old feuds. We had found something greater. The trial was over, but the true test was just beginning. Would we be able to hold on to the peace we had forged? Only time would tell. But for the first time in my life, I believed it was possible. Part 5. The Seeds of Doubt. Months passed, and the winds of change began to stir in both kingdoms. The alliance we had forged, the peace we had dreamed of, seemed to take root in the hearts of many. But not all. A deep unease began to settle in the shadows of our lands. Whispered rumors, carried by the wind, began to speak of betrayal. The peace we had so carefully crafted was not universally welcome, especially by the older generations who had lived through the bloodshed. In my kingdom, the older lords, the generals who had led men to battle, began to question the motives behind our decision to embrace peace. "How can we trust them?" they would ask in the private chambers, their voices heavy with the weight of old grudges. "What if this is just a trick to weaken us, to make us vulnerable?" I could not deny that there was a part of me that shared their fear. The peace we had formed was fragile, like a delicate glass sculpture that could shatter with a single misstep. Yet, I had sworn to follow this path, and I could not turn back now. In Velen, it was no different. Princess Leora had returned to her people, only to find that many of her nobles shared the same doubts. Her closest advisor, Lord Valen, openly questioned her decision to ally with me. "This peace is a fantasy," he had told her in the privacy of her chambers. "We are not friends with your enemy. We are simply delaying the inevitable. Their people will never accept us." Leora, always the calm and composed one, took these concerns in stride. Yet I could see the toll it was taking on her. She had trusted the people of Velen to follow her lead, just as I had trusted mine. But trust was not easily earned, especially when old fears ran deep. Part 6. The Shadow of Rebellion. One evening, I received an urgent message from Leora. The tone of her letter was grave, the words heavy with something I could not place. "There are whispers of rebellion in Velen. A group of disgruntled generals, former soldiers, and nobles are beginning to rally behind the idea of war once more. They claim that the alliance with your kingdom is a betrayal. They have made plans to take matters into their own hands." I read the letter several times, each word sinking deeper into my chest like a stone. I had hoped that the peace would be accepted, that it would grow stronger with time. But the seeds of rebellion had already been planted, and now they threatened to sprout. Leora's message continued, "I am sending emissaries to calm the unrest, but I fear that I may not be able to stop it. We must act swiftly, or our kingdoms may fall into chaos once again." I could feel the weight of the decision before me. I had promised Leora that we would walk this path together, but what if that path was leading us toward the very thing we had fought to avoid? I gathered my advisors immediately, the tension in the room palpable. Lord Phelan, ever the pragmatist, spoke first. "Your Majesty, we must act now. We cannot allow this rebellion to spread. If they take control of Velen, the alliance will be over, and we will be left with nothing but war once more. I turned to the map spread out on the table. The thought of sending my soldiers to Velen, to intervene in their internal struggles, made my blood run cold. But was it the only way? The council fell silent. The decision was mine alone. Part 7, The Crossroads of Fate. I stood on the edge of the decision, teetering between two worlds. The memory of the trial, the moment when Leora and I had faced our own demons, flashed through my mind. I had sworn to her that we would not repeat the mistakes of the past. But now, with war once again threatening to tear us apart, I wondered if that was even possible. I sent a message to Leora, asking her to meet me once more, this time at the heart of the valley where we had first met. The air between us felt heavier now, fraught with the gravity of our circumstances. When she arrived, I could see the weariness in her eyes, the burden of leadership etched into her features. She did not wait for pleasantries, but spoke immediately. I have sent emissaries to quell the rebellion, but I fear it is too late. The factions have already begun to move. Some of my closest allies have turned against me. They say peace was a mistake, that it has weakened us. I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I've heard the same in my kingdom. Our people are not ready for peace. We've tried to break centuries of hatred, but the scars are too deep. Leora sighed, and for the first time, I saw vulnerability in her. What do we do now? Can we still save this alliance, or have we failed? We stood there, the silence between us thick and heavy. Then, as though a decision had been made in the depths of our hearts, I spoke. We cannot let our kingdoms return to war. We've come too far. We must face this rebellion together, as one. Leora's eyes met mine, and for the first time since the trial, I saw the same resolve in her that had driven her to seek peace in the first place. Then let us face it together, not as kings and queens, but as the people we have always been. We will lead by example, no matter the cost. Part 8, The Final Test. And so, we did. Together, Leora and I marched toward the heart of the rebellion. We did not bring armies or weapons, but our message. A message of unity. A message that peace was not a weakness, but the greatest strength. When we reached the rebels' camp, I stood before them, my crown removed, my armor set aside. I was not a king in that moment. I was simply a man, tired of fighting, tired of watching innocent lives lost for the sake of pride and fear. Leora stood beside me, her eyes unwavering. We could fight, she said to the rebels, her voice clear and strong. We could tear down everything we have built. But we have learned that peace is not something given. It is something earned. If you want war, you can have it. But know this, we will not fight it. We will not give you the excuse to break our spirits. The silence was deafening, but in that silence, something shifted. The leaders of the rebellion looked at us, at the woman and the man who had come not to conquer, but to heal. And in that moment, the truth became clear. Peace was not about defeating the enemy. It was about convincing your own people to believe in something greater than war. And so, we stood together, in the face of all that tried to tear us apart. And somehow, together, we knew that the peace we had fought for would survive. For now, the kingdoms of Velen and my land were united. And perhaps, just perhaps, we had forged something stronger than any sword or crown, a bond that could not be broken.